Hi everyone, and in today's video of Accelerated Chess Dragon, we're going to be looking at a game that was played between Jose Raul Capablanca and Alexander Alekhine. Now this was played in the 1927 World Chess Championship match in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Capablanca is the champion here, and Alekhine is the challenger. So without further ado, let's look at this game. Capablanca has the white pieces, and he opens with d4. Knight to f6 by Alekhine, and now knight f3. b6, and this is sort of a mix between the Torre, the London, and the Kali systems. g3, bishop to b7, bishop to g2, c5 by Alekhine, trying to challenge the d4 pawn. Castles by Capablanca, and now a trade on d4, and a trade on g2. So 7 moves into the game, we can see that both sides are it's an equal position. Now we can see that Alekhine needs to start developing his pieces, maybe play something like g6 and bishop g7. But he plays d5. He's just gaining some space in the center with his pawns, taking out territory on the c4 and e4 squares. c4 by Capablanca, challenging the d5 pawn. And now e6 by Alekhine, reinforcing it. And now queen a4 check by Capablanca. And this is rather a move you would probably not see today, as well. You don't usually bring your queen out like this for reasons like queen d7. And now Capablanca plays knight to b5. He has a threat, so let's assume that Alekhine does not see the threat and he plays h6. How would you win here as Capablanca? Okay, so if you've paused the video and maybe tried to take some time to solve this, the move is knight c7 check. And this will simply win material. Say after king to d8, there's an exchange on d7, and the knight will grab the a8 rook. And even if you try to win the knight will just capture on b6 first, and then well, you're down the exchange, and this is simply too easy for white. So, knight c6. Now knight c7 check is ineffective because, well, the queen will simply grab it. So now an exchange on d5, and now bishop to f4, trying to play knight c7 once again. Rook to c8 by Alekhine, and now rook c1. This is threatening mainly the move knight c7 check. Let's say that h6 is played, knight c7 check, and it doesn't matter even if you give up your rook for the 2 pieces. Let's say this, then even rook takes c6 is good enough. And well, this is obviously winning now. So this is why bishop c5, to guard the c file. And now b4, trying to deflect the bishop away. And here, Alekhine cannot take the bishop with his knight, or the pawn with his knight. If you take it with the knight, then there is knight d6 check, and after king to e7, note that bishop takes d6 will just lead to more material loss after rook c8 check, king e7, queen takes d7 check, king takes d7, and rook takes h8. So that is why after king e7, you will simply trade all the pieces, let's say this, 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 and you will be up material. So knight takes d4 is an obvious no-no. But what happens if maybe bishop takes b4? That is what Alekhine played. However, there's not really a clear way to deal with this. If you move your bishop, then yet again knight c7 will be a threat. So bishop takes b4. Alekhine has to give up some material for this to happen. And Capablanca finds a way to win material. He plays rook takes c6, and after rook takes c6, queen takes b4. He has 2 pieces for the rook, and that is usually a good sign. And now we have knight to e4 by Alekhine. So what Alekhine is doing is he's trying to at least get some activity for his pieces. If he's going to be down material, then he's at least going to find a way to get some activity. And Capablanca, of course, does not want his knight to be in his territory, so he plays knight to d2 to try exchanging it off. And we have an exchange on d2, and now Alekhine castles. So we're completely out of the opening, and we can see that both sides have castled. Alekhine has the rook for a knight and a bishop, and he also does have an extra pawn, but Capablanca has so many other advantages that you could name. So rook to d1 by Capablanca, trying to target this d5 pawn. If that d5 pawn can fall, then that will be a pretty good thing for Capablanca, as then he could start maybe advancing these pawns. But of course, Alekhine is not just going to sit there and allow him to do that. He plays rook c5. And now knight to d4 by Capablanca. Another good thing that Capablanca does is that this is an isolated pawn. And usually you have to blockade a isolated pawn. And then you have to exchange pieces so that, well, then it'll be easier for you to attack the isolated pawn. And then finally, you have to, you block the square in front of it, you exchange pieces, and you should just then start bringing your pieces into the game, and then it'll be pretty easy to win. Knight to d4 blockades the pawn, and if many people don't know this, the knight is the best blockader of anything, usually pawns. So knight d4 is going to be a pretty nice move, just simply guarding the pawn, or simply blocking the d5 pawn. And now rook to e8. So we can see that Alekhine has both open files, and he's going to have this as his compensation, whereas Capablanca is going to use his material advantage as his compensation. Knight to b3 by Capablanca. So, okay, so he's bringing his knight back, maybe pressuring this rook on c5. And now rook c to c8. Now, what this move is doing is it draws the rook back, and it's basically saying to Capablanca that if you're going to be taking my pawn on d5, then I'll exchange and grab your pawn on e2. The last thing Capablanca wants from Alekhine is him getting so much activity for his rooks. So he just plays e3. Now queen takes d5 actually is a threat, but again, Alekhine is trying to maybe do a tit-for-tat situation. He plays queen a4, saying that, okay, if you grab the d5 pawn, I'll grab your a2 pawn. And, okay, Capablanca takes, and Alekhine actually doesn't take immediately. He rather plays rook c2. At least he's going to grab some activity before he grabs the pawn. And now rook to d2. And here we have an exchange on e2. And now Capablanca plays queen c6, attacking this rook on e8. And this forces the rook back to f8. Note that you cannot play king to f8 if you want to defend, because this will simply lead to a mate after bishop d6 check. You can play rook e7 and then queen c8 or queen a8 is checkmate, or you can play king g8 and this is checkmate. So that is why you're kind of forced to play rook back to f8. And now knight to d4 by Capablanca. He's going to start bringing his pieces into the game, and it's going to be quite fun for him. King to h8 by Alekhine, and now bishop to e5. Having a serious threat that if Alekhine doesn't realize, he's just going to lose the game instantly. So let's say that Alekhine plays a move like a6. What will you do here as Capablanca? So I encourage you to pause the video and try winning the game instantly. Okay, so if you thought about this, the correct move is bishop takes g7 check. Now, what does this move do? It's trying to divert the king to g7, and it's also trying to remove some shelter from the king. Let's say the king goes to g8. Well, then you will simply grab this rook on f8, and you're going to be up material. Say after king takes f8. This is going to be pretty easy. But let's say that he, instead of king g8, Alekhine would have taken on g7. Then there is knight f5 check. The king will have to go back to g8, as after h8, then there's not queen takes b6, rather, there's queen f6 check. And after king to g8, there is knight to e7, knight h6, or queen g7. You can name whichever mate. Let's say knight e7. This is checkmate. So that's why after this, you have to play king to g8, not king h8. But king g8 is no better, as after queen f6, you have to give up this queen. And how do you give up this queen? You give a check, and after f3, you take on f5. And now you're simply going to win here. You are up so much material as white. You have a queen against a rook, and this is going to be quite easy. So here, that is why Alekhine played f6 here. And here, right, f6, and now Capablanca uses this time to play knight e6, bringing more pieces and bringing them more actively. Rook g8, and now bishop to d4 by Capablanca, centralizing his bishop, and this is actually quite a good position. Capablanca has way more activity than Alekhine. Capablanca has basically forced Alekhine's rook into g8, so that is 1+. And now h6 by Alekhine. And now Capablanca plays h4, maybe trying to play something like h5. It's also just trying to, gain more space. And now queen to b1 by Alekhine. Here you're basically going into desperate mode and defense mode, because you need to bring the queen back like to g6, maybe to h7, because you can't you must defend now. But Alekhine is a bit too late to defend this position. Here Capablanca plays knight takes g7, and probably he could have done this before, but he probably just wanted to maybe gain some space before this. And now knight takes g7, and here if rook takes g7 is played, then there is simply queen takes f6, and now it's really hard to defend. Let's say you play queen e4 check. There's king h2. Say queen g4. Queen g4. There is queen takes h6, and after king to g8, you can just simply maybe you can just take with the bishop, and now we can easily tell who's winning. Queen takes g7, queen e6 check, and well, that's quite easy to win. So that is why queen g6 was played, and here Capablanca is trying to tempt Alekhine to take the knight. He plays h5. And also, I just wanted to point out something else. If king takes g7, then that is also bad, because queen takes f6 check, king h7, queen f7 check, rook g7, and now queen takes g7. This is checkmate. But queen g6 was played. And now h5, trying to tempt the queen to take. Of course, the queen does not want to take the knight, as then bishop takes f6 would simply be winning. So instead, queen f7 by Alekhine. He has to move his queen away, and now knight to f5, trying to aim for this h6 pawn. And this is actually a very nice position for Capablanca, as he's on the attack, and Alekhine has no real counter attack. So now king to h7 by Alekhine, and now queen e4, trying to threaten a discovery, namely knight d6 check, and now rook to e8 by Alekhine, and now queen to f4 by Capablanca. So Capablanca is trying to attack this h6 pawn. Queen f8, defending, and now knight to d6 by Capablanca. So what he's doing is he's freeing the f5 square for his queen. Rook to e7, and now bishop captures on f6. So we can see that slowly but surely Capablanca is eating up Alekhine's defenses. Queen a8 check, and now e4, simply blocking the check, and now rook to g7. Here, Alekhine gave up some material, although this is not really that much helpful. Captures on g7, and now knight f5 check. So this is really a bad position, and after king f7 was played, after queen c7 check here, Alekhine simply resigned the game. Because there's no way to hold on to this position anymore. If you play king to f8, this is the best move. Then there is queen e7 check, king g8, and now queen g7 mate. If you play king e8 or king g8, or king f6, let's say king f6 here, then there's just queen e7, and that's mate. If you play king e8, same thing. And if you play king to g8, then queen g7. This is checkmate, and yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions or feedback for me, please let me know in the comments section, and stay tuned for more chess.